The Apple iPhone has now turned 9 years old since its inception, and funny enough, we're still on the number 6 in its name. That's because Apple has caught the S bug. Never a design overhaul, but a complete reworking of the internals and sometimes even minor things on the outside. That seems to be the story with the new iPhone 6s, and Apple certainly wants you to know that it's all new with their recent ads and taglines like, "The only thing that's changed is everything." But is that really true? Well, let's dive into the review of the Apple iPhone 6s. As I mentioned, the S updates never changed the look of the iPhone, and technically speaking, the iPhone looks exactly the same as the iPhone 6 that preceded it. Though in every single dimension, the iPhone is taller, wider, thicker, and even heavier. And that's because Apple has moved to a new 7000 series grade aluminum and have strengthened the inside where bendgate occurred near the volume buttons. And also, the display is fairly thicker and more strong to support 3D touch. Though aesthetically, the only changes is the lack of the FCC writings on the back and the little S found above that. Also, if you see this rose gold color, or sometimes referred to as apple pink, then that's also the new iPhone 6s. And if you did get the pink iPhone or any of the other colors and wanted something a little bit more wild, you can always go the skin route. Like this one right here. That's right, this is Iron Man on my iPhone 6s. This is as dope as it really gets here. Link about that below if you want to check it out. What also hasn't changed is the screen resolution. Still barely above the 720p mark at 1334 by 750, though it still ranks as one of the best panels around, but weirdly enough, it seems a little less bright than last year's panel. Now what has changed is actually quite a bit on the internals. Now it's running an Apple A9 processor. It's a 1.8 GHz dual-core processor with two very powerful cores. It scores surprisingly well on Geekbench, and for the first time ever, the iPhone has 2 GB of RAM, something that was needed a while back and definitely is now needed with the new app switcher in iOS 9. Stubbornly, the iPhone still comes in its base 16 GB configurations, but 64 and 128 GB models are still available. And the last piece of news for the internals is the new battery. It's one that's slightly smaller than the battery that's in the iPhone 6. Weird, huh? So with all of that, what does this mean for the iPhone as a performer? Well, to put it in simple terms, this is the quickest responding iPhone I have ever used. I'm being completely honest here. The iPhone 6s has been the best experience I've ever had with an iPhone. Quicker than the iPhone 6 when it came fresh with iOS 8, and definitely a heck of a lot quicker than the iPhone 6 now running iOS 9. Things from browsing the web, watching videos, even switching between the plethora of applications available, and the iPhone 6s doesn't miss a beat. Also, this year Apple has added 2 new hardware features to improve your experience within iOS 9. The first one is Touch ID 2.0. This thing is unbelievably fast. It's so fast, in fact, that when I use my finger on the home button to check the time, the iPhone will have already unlocked. It's actually a little too fast. But the second feature is something you really can't see. It's called 3D Touch, which is a derivative of Apple's Force Touch. But first, let me explain the differences. Force Touch, that's found on the Apple Watch or the new trackpads of Apple's latest notebooks, can only really feel just extra pressure. It knows the difference between a tap and a force touch. So press it hard and it gives you a force touch, tap it lightly, and it's just registered as a normal touch. 3D Touch has more levels of pressure sensitivity. It can measure a light pressure touch all the way up to the heaviest pressure touch, hence the term three-dimensional touch. So underneath the iPhone lies 90 pressure sensors. They actively measure the amount of pressure applied to the display, so for example, say you're browsing the web and you see a link you want to take a look at, they'll lightly press down on the display and you get a peek, as Apple likes to call it. This is a non-full screen window showing you a rendered web page. Then say you want to open it and read it some more, so you press a little harder on the display and it pops open. Think of this as a secondary click for your phone, but unlike the text menu which comes up on your desktop software experience, it opens up up hidden menus and other gestures. The peek and pop features work on other applications as well, like messages, email, and even Instagram. And while it's a little odd to use at first, give it a couple days and you will get used to it. You also have the ability to pull up hidden menus on application icons, like the camera for example. You can go straight into taking a selfie if you 3D touch on the app icon. Now with 3D touch, you also get to use Apple's new haptic feedback, which is called their Taptic Engine. Basically like the one on their Apple Watch and trackpads, but it's a way more direct response than a normal vibrate motor. Next up is the camera. Ever since the Galaxy Note 4, Apple has sort of fallen off their throne of being the best mobile camera. Enough so that Apple no longer claims they have the best smartphone camera in their keynotes anymore. This year, Apple has upped their game with a new 12-megapixel sensor which can now record 4K video. And, well, it's pretty good. Just not as good as the Galaxy Note 5, which is a huge letdown. The photos overall are great. They have tons of detail, are fairly well exposed, though the iPhone has a tendency to overexpose some of its photos. And the colors are really natural. Unlike some of the photos off the Galaxy S6 or the Note 5 that have tons of sharpness, tons of detail, the iPhone 6s takes the much more softer and more natural looking photo, and perhaps it's a little close to what you actually see in real life. But one thing that I must say is the iPhone's camera application, while basic and lacking any pro features, it's still one of the best camera apps around. But there's another feature within the camera software this year, and that's called Live Photos. Sort of a spin-off of HTC's Live Photos and HTC Sense, but when you press this little icon in the camera application, the iPhone will automatically record 1.5 seconds before and after the shutter and makes a live photo. Once you do, you can 3D touch the photo in your photo album and make it come to life, or so Apple says. While the feature is really cool to show off, it's not exactly revolutionary and it takes like 5 times the storage, and Apple still sells a 16GB iPhone. Kinda pointless. The next feature really gets me too: 4K video. 4K video and 16GB of built-in storage does not go very well. First off, 4K must be enabled within the settings where it tells you, hey, look, 4K takes a lot of room. 375 megabytes per minute, in fact. But past the 16GB argument, the video quality is again fairly good. Detail's quite nice, dynamic range is quite good, and the colors are again natural as they could be. It's just not quite up to par with the Galaxy Note 5. However, I will say the 4K video off the iPhone 6s looks just about as good or even slightly better than the LG G4. So the last thing I want to talk about is the battery life on the iPhone 6s. Overall, it's decent, but if you're a power user, you may want to opt for the larger iPhone 6s Plus, which my review of that will be coming very soon after this one. The iPhone 6s will power you through a mild day of usage with some battery life to spare, but it's just a really small battery, actually a sub 2000 mAh battery. So the iPhone 6s, it's certainly the best iPhone around, but shouldn't every new version of a phone be its best version of itself? I think that only makes sense. I think the real question to ask is this new iPhone 6s a good indicator if the iPhone is still a success? Well, yes and no. The iPhone is still massively popular for its simplistic ideals, and 3D touch is really interesting, but I don't quite know if it's revolutionary. What I do know is it's here for quite a while. And if you're wondering if you should buy the iPhone 6s, well, that really depends on you. If you're coming from the iPhone 6 and you're perfectly happy and content, then why do you need to drop an extra $650 minimum for a new phone? If you're coming from the iPhone 5s or below, then perhaps it is time for an upgrade. But anyway, hope you enjoyed my review of the iPhone 6s, and if you did, make sure to hit that thumbs up button below and subscribe for future videos. And as always, my name is Marco Hanna, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.